We love this lady in my house.
At 71, I no longer have the strength or the desire to carry the weight of my silence. For decades, people admired my beauty, my elegance, my mystery. They thought the silence made me graceful. In truth, it made me invisible. And now, after a lifetime of fear, fame, and fractures no one ever truly saw, I am finally ready to reveal the story I spent most of my life hiding. Who loved me? Who broke me? And why did I allow this industry to own pieces of me I never meant to give away? I have been called many things: an icon, a recluse, a fragile beauty, a woman who had everything and somehow lost herself along the way. But none of those descriptions capture the truth. Because behind the shimmering dresses, behind the soft-spoken interviews, behind the magazine covers that turned me into a fantasy, there lived a frightened girl who never understood why love hurt more than it healed, and why Hollywood seemed determined to shape me in its own image. People saw the roles, the awards, the glamour. They didn't see the three loves that haunted me long after they ended. Loves that chipped away at my confidence, my voice, my sense of self. Loves that promised safety but delivered fear. Loves that made me believe I was only worthy when I was perfect, beautiful, compliant. And they certainly never saw the man who controlled everything from the shadows. The studio boss who decided my career, my image, my opportunities, and, in many ways, my identity. He wasn't the loudest villain. He wasn't the cruelest. But he was the one who understood how to break a woman quietly, methodically, until she believed she needed him to survive. For years, I wondered why I stayed silent. Was it fear? Was it shame? Or was it the belief that no one would ever love the real me? Only the version they created? Today, at 71, I am done wondering. This is the truth about the three haunted loves that destroyed my confidence, and the man who controlled my life on the day I entered Hollywood. The truth I protected out of fear. The truth I avoided because facing it meant admitting how much I had lost. And now, I am finally ready. I was not born into the shimmering world people associate with my name. Long before the lights found me, I was a quiet, fragile girl growing up in a small southern town, surrounded by expectations I could never quite fulfill. My family loved me, but fear lived in our house like a second heartbeat. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of never being enough. I learned to stay small, to stay quiet, to stay pleasing. I learned to make myself delicate so the world wouldn't break me first. But beauty, my uninvited gift, became a spotlight I never asked for. Strangers told me I was born for Hollywood long before I understood what Hollywood truly demanded. Teachers, neighbors, even relatives whispered the same prophecy: "You're too pretty for a normal life." I didn't feel pretty. I felt watched. I felt exposed. But in a world where beauty seemed to be the only currency I possessed, I followed the path others laid out for me. When I arrived in Hollywood, I was still trembling inside. I hid it behind soft smiles and a voice that never rose above a careful whisper. And Hollywood adored me for it. They loved the illusion of vulnerability wrapped in beauty. They loved that I didn't fight back. They loved that I didn't know how to. My rise was fast, too fast for a girl who still clung to fear like a childhood blanket. One film led to another, one magazine cover to the next, until suddenly I was everywhere. People call me a goddess, a dream, a fantasy. They wrote about my eyes, my hair, my silence. They praised the softness they projected onto me, never noticing it was the armor I used to survive. But what they celebrated was not a woman. It was a myth, a sculpture shaped by others' desires. The world saw confidence in my stillness, but stillness was simply the way I held myself together. They saw mystery in my quiet, but quiet was the last defense I had left. They saw perfection in my beauty, but beauty had become the mask I hid behind. As my fame grew, so did the darkness. The panic attacks I hid behind bathroom doors. The sleepless nights spent wondering if I was losing my mind. The moments on set when my hands shook so violently a makeup artist had to hold them still. The debts that strangled my freedom. the headlines that mocked my fragility instead of asking why it existed. I struggled in silence, because silence was the only language I knew. Inside the glamour, I was crumbling. The more people praised me, the more I felt like an imposter trapped inside a porcelain shell that could crack at any moment. Everyone saw the beauty. Very few saw the wounds. Almost no one saw the girl still terrified of being unlovable. The world thought they knew Kim Basinger, the icon, the mystery, the woman who floated through Hollywood like a dream. But no one knew the real story. And behind it all, I was falling apart. The first haunted love of my life came wrapped in tenderness. At least, that's what I believed then. I call him the illusionist, not because he meant to deceive me, but because loving him felt like stepping into a dream I didn't realize was dangerous until I couldn't wake up. I met him when my career was just beginning to rise. I was young, unsure, made of soft edges that hadn't yet turned sharp. He was older, wiser, confident in ways that felt intoxicating to a woman who had spent her life doubting every step she took. He told me I was special. He told me I was brilliant. He told me I was stronger than I believed. No one had ever spoken to me like that. No one had ever looked at me like that. "I see you," he whispered once, brushing a strand of hair from my cheek. "Not the way Hollywood sees you, the way you really are." I remember the way my breath caught. No one saw the real me. Not even I did. But the love that lifts you can also be the love that unravels you. He needed me in ways I didn't understand. And slowly, gently, almost lovingly, he taught me to depend on him. He praised me when I was insecure and withdrew when I was strong. He held me when I cried and disappeared when I needed clarity. I didn't recognize the pattern then. I only recognized the ache of wanting him to stay. I shaped myself to fit his desires, speaking softer, stepping more carefully, becoming smaller whenever he became uncertain. I thought this was love. I thought this was sacrifice. I thought this was the price of being cherished by a man who saw beauty in my fragility. But fragility is not a foundation. It is a warning. The first time he raised his voice, I apologized before he could. The first time he criticized my success, I shrank to make him feel taller. The first time he accused me of changing, I begged him to tell me who he needed me to be. "I just want you the way you were," he said. But I was no longer that girl. I was becoming someone new, someone bolder, someone visible, someone he didn't know how to love. The unraveling wasn't dramatic. It wasn't violent. It was a slow erosion of confidence I didn't realize was disappearing until one day I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. He didn't break me on purpose. He broke me because I allowed my worth to rest in his hands. And when he finally left, he took with him the version of myself I had worked so hard to believe in. The first haunted love taught me a truth I wasn't ready to learn. You can lose yourself long before you lose the person you love. The second haunted love did not arrive quietly. He came into my life like a storm, sudden, electric, irresistible. I call him the Tempest because loving him felt like being swept into winds I could not control. If my first love unraveled me gently, this one tore through me with a force that left nothing standing. We met at a time when the world insisted I was at my most powerful, beautiful, celebrated, desired. But inside, I was fragile in ways no one suspected, and he sensed it. Storms always know where to land. He wasn't gentle. He wasn't patient. He wasn't the type of man who held your hand carefully. He pulled you into his orbit, made you feel alive in a way that hurt and healed at the same time. His passion felt like a promise. His attention felt like validation. His presence felt like oxygen. "I've never met anyone like you," he told me the night he kissed me for the first time. And the terrifying thing was, I believed him. He gave me intensity when I craved certainty, heat when I needed calm, chaos when all I wanted was safety. But I confused intensity with love. I confused passion with devotion. I confused the fire in his eyes with the feeling of being wanted. The warning signs appeared early. His jealousy, his temper, the way he watched my every interaction, as if the world were competing for pieces of me he believed belonged solely to him. The way he crumbled whenever I pulled away, only to burn hotter the moment I stepped closer. Love shouldn't feel like a battlefield, but with him, every moment did. One evening, after a long day on set, he arrived at my house unannounced. His voice trembled as he accused me of forgetting him, of prioritizing my career, of letting my image matter more than our love. I tried to explain. I tried to hold him. I tried to calm him. But storms cannot be soothed. They can only be survived. He slammed a hand against the wall beside me. Not to hurt me, but to express a pain he couldn't articulate. "I can't lose you," he said, voice breaking. And in that moment, I realized the truth. I couldn't keep him, but I didn't leave. Not then, because the storm had become familiar, because chaos felt like attention, because the part of me that feared abandonment mistook his volatility for passion. It ended the only way storms do, with destruction. One day, without warning, he disappeared, retreating as abruptly as he arrived. No explanation, no closure, no final words. He left behind only echoes, debris, and the haunting realization that I had given my heart to a man who loved me fiercely, but loved the chaos inside himself even more. The second haunted love taught me that passion without peace is just another form of violence, and that sometimes the greatest damage comes from the people who burn for you too brightly. The third haunted love was the quietest of them all, and perhaps it is why he hurt me the most. I call him the beautiful lie, because everything about him felt comforting, flawless, almost too gentle to question. After surviving the storm, I thought I needed calm. What I didn't realize was that calm can be its own kind of deception. He entered my life during a rare stretch of stillness, when I believed I was finally learning how to breathe again. He wasn't dramatic. He wasn't intense. He wasn't a man who demanded attention the moment he walked into a room. He was soft-spoken, thoughtful, steady. He asked about my day as if the answer mattered. He listened without interrupting. He touched me like he was afraid of breaking something delicate. For the first time in years, I felt safe. But safety, when you've lived your whole life in fear, can be disorienting. I mistook gentleness for truth. I mistook consistency for commitment. I mistook the absence of chaos for the presence of love. He told me everything I'd longed to hear. "You're enough. You don't have to try so hard. I will never hurt you." And though some part of me wanted desperately to believe him, another part, a quiet, wounded part, felt the unease beneath his sweetness. It began with small things, comments wrapped in kindness but sharpened by something else, suggestions about how I should present myself, questions about my schedule that sounded more like subtle disapproval, moments where his silence felt heavier than any argument. "You're so much calmer now," he said once, brushing my hair back. "I like you this way, as if there was a version of me he preferred, as if I was only lovable when I was small, quiet, contained." One evening, during a dinner that should have been intimate, he looked at me with a tenderness that made my heart ache, and then he said the words that shattered the illusion. "I don't want you to go back to the woman you were." She scared me. The woman I was? The woman who survived manipulation, chaos, heartbreak, pressure? The woman who was trying, desperately, not to drown? I realized then that he loved a version of me that wasn't real. He loved the calm after my destruction, not the woman who crawled out of it. In the end, he didn't leave with anger or noise. He drifted away, a gentle disappearance, a soft rejection, a fading presence that left me questioning if I had imagined our connection entirely. But the truth was clear. He never truly loved me. He loved the idea of me, and an idea cannot hold you when you break. The third haunted love taught me a lesson I never wanted to learn. Sometimes the deepest wounds are inflicted not by the ones who scream, but by the ones who whisper. The fourth truth is the one shaped not by love, but by power. If the three men before this fracture my confidence, the puppeteer shattered the pieces that remained. He was the studio boss, the kind of man whose name didn't need to be spoken out loud because everyone in Hollywood already knew it. Men like him didn't run the industry. They were the industry. He discovered me before I understood what power meant, before I knew the cost of beauty. before I recognized the difference between opportunity and ownership. He looked at me as if I were raw material, a precious gem that needed refining, polishing, cutting. And he believed he was the only one with the skill to do it. "You're going to be a star," he told me in his office, sunlight slicing through the blinds, casting bars across the floor like a warning. "But only if you let me build you." Let him build me, as if I were a product, a sculpture, a thing. At first, his influence felt like support. He offered me roles, introduced me to directors, protected me from the vultures circling every new actress in town. I thought he cared. I thought he saw something in me worth nurturing. He didn't. He saw something worth owning. His guidance soon became commands. His suggestions became obligations. His expectations became law. He controlled the roles I accepted, the interviews I gave, the image I presented, the relationships I was allowed to have. He once stopped me in the hallway after I turned down a project that felt too revealing, too dangerous for my fragile mental state. His smile was calm, but his eyes were cold enough to freeze the air. "Kim," he said softly, "Hollywood doesn't bend for your feelings. You bend for Hollywood." I remember the chill that ran through me. I remember forcing a smile. I remember nodding. Fear has a way of teaching obedience. Years later, when I tried to break away, to choose my own projects, my own direction, he showed me what power really looked like. Deals fell apart. Calls went unanswered. Scripts that were promised to me suddenly disappeared. Headlines emerged, subtle but sharp, questioning my stability, my professionalism, my reliability. None of it was accidental. "You need me more than you think," he said during our final confrontation. "Without me, you'll drown." But I was already drowning, and he was the one holding my head under. The collapse that followed, financial ruin, emotional breakdown, public scrutiny, was not just the result of my own fragility. It was the consequence of challenging a man who believed he controlled my life. And for a long time he did. The fourth truth is this: he didn't break my career. He broke my sense of freedom. And nothing is more dangerous than a man who thinks a woman's life belongs to him. The fifth truth is the one I guarded longer than any other. It wasn't a scandal. It wasn't a betrayal. It wasn't a headline waiting to happen. It was love, real, tender, inconvenient love. The kind Hollywood cannot market, cannot predict, cannot control. And because of that, it was the one truth I could never speak. Not until now. He was not famous, not powerful, not connected to any studio, any agent, any director. He was simply a man who met me at a moment when I was more ghost than woman. I call him the quiet salvation because that is what he was. Not a storm, not a fantasy, not an illusion. He was the calm I had never known, the softness I had never believed I deserved. We met during a lull in my career, when I had begun to feel the weight of everything I'd lost. I was tired, fragile, trying desperately to disappear. And somehow, in my disappearance, he found me. He didn't recognize me at first. Not the actress, not the icon, not the woman whose face had been printed on posters and billboards. He recognized something far more important: the sadness in my eyes, the fear in my voice, the loneliness I carried like a shadow. "You look like someone who's been running a long time," he said the first night we spoke. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He didn't push. He didn't analyze. He didn't try to fix me. He just sat with me, quiet, steady, present. And in a world that had always demanded performance, his presence felt like truth. We spent nights talking until dawn, mornings drinking coffee in silence, afternoons walking without being recognized, without being photographed, without being shaped into a narrative for someone else's gain. For a moment, just a moment, I thought I could build a life with him. But Hollywood does not let its ghosts rest, and it does not let its women choose freely. Rumors began to swirl. Questions surfaced. Pressure returned. My team warned me that being seen with someone ordinary would confuse the public. The studio warned me that my image needed to remain untouched, unattached, pristine. Even he began to feel the weight of my world pressing down on him. One evening, after weeks of tension, he stood in my doorway with a look I will never forget. sadness wrapped in understanding. "I love you," he said quietly, "but I don't know if I'm strong enough to love you like this." My throat tightened. "I can protect us," I whispered. He shook his head. "You can't even protect yourself." And he was right. We didn't break up. We faded. Not out of anger, not out of betrayal, but out of exhaustion. Losing him was the deepest cut, because for once, love wasn't the problem. The world around me was. And this is the truth I can only tell now, at 71. There's a point in every life when the weight becomes unbearable. Not overnight, not suddenly, but gradually, like a slow leak in the soul. By the time I realized I was breaking, the cracks were already too deep to mend. The beauty they praised had become my prison. The silence they admired had become my weapon against myself. The loves that promised comfort had left me hollow, and the industry that shaped me had drained me of every defense. I remember the night the collapse finally claimed me. The house was quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you aware of your heartbeat, your breath, your isolation. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, still dressed from an event I barely remembered attending. My makeup was perfect. My hair was immaculate. My dress shimmered under the dim light. I looked like a woman who had everything under control, but I felt like a shadow pretending to be human. The silence pressed against me until it hurt. I tried to stand, but my legs trembled. I tried to breathe, but the air felt too heavy. I tried to hold myself together, but the pieces of me had already begun to scatter. "I don't know who I am anymore," I whispered to no one. The truth trembled in my voice, raw and unfiltered. For years, I had been performing strength for a world that rewarded fragility only when it was beautiful. I wasn't beautiful that night. I was breaking, slowly, painfully, completely. I sank to the floor, my back against the wall, knees drawn to my chest. My breath came in shallow gasps. My hands shook uncontrollably, and then the tears came, violent, unstoppable, years in the making. I cried not because of the men who hurt me, not because of the boss who controlled me, not because of the love I lost, but because I no longer recognized the woman who had survived all of it. I felt like a ghost, and I said it out loud, the words shattering as they left my lips. A ghost, seen but not known, touched but never held, admired but never understood. The world forgot me. I whispered next, though the truth was harsher. I forgot myself long before the world ever did. The panic rose like a wave, crashing against the inside of my chest until I could barely breathe. The walls closed in. The floor tilted. My vision blurred. I pressed my hands against the cool surface of the wall, desperate for anything solid to hold on to. But in that moment, nothing felt solid. Not my past, not my present, not the woman I was supposed to be. I stayed on that floor for hours, trembling, drowning in silence, letting years of pain pour out of me until I had nothing left to give. That night didn't make me stronger. It made me honest. And honesty was the beginning of everything that came next. Recovery didn't happen in a single revelation. There was no triumphant music, no cinematic sunrise, no dramatic breakthrough. Healing arrived like the softest tap on a locked door, quiet, hesitant, unsure if it was welcome. And for a long time, I didn't open it. I wasn't ready. I didn't know how to exist without my wounds. I didn't know who I was without the pain that had shaped me. But eventually, after the collapse stripped me bare, I realized something simple. If I didn't learn to walk again, the industry would have buried me alive. So I took the smallest steps. I woke up one morning and didn't reach for the mask I had worn for decades. I stood in front of a mirror without fixing my hair, without adjusting my expression, without performing beauty. I let my reflection be imperfect, be aged, be real. For the first time, it didn't terrify me. The woman staring back wasn't the broken figure from the night of my collapse. She wasn't the icon the world insisted I still was. She was something new, someone unedited, someone honest, a survivor. I began turning down roles that demanded I resurrect a younger version of myself. I chose scripts that allowed me to breathe, not suffocate. I surrounded myself with people who saw me not as a product, but as a person, People who didn't flinch at my scars. People who didn't need my beauty to validate my worth. Little by little, I felt my confidence return. Not the shiny, fragile confidence built on applause, but a quieter, steadier one built on truth. I forgave myself for the loves I lost, for the woman I couldn't be, for the fear that ruled me, for the silence that protected others instead of me. And I forgave the girl I once was, the one who walked into Hollywood carrying too many wounds and too few defenses. She did the best she could with what she knew. She survived storms meant to erase her. She endured a world that demanded perfection without offering protection. One afternoon, as I sat alone in my garden, no cameras, no scripts, no expectations, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Peace. Not the fragile peace that depends on stillness. Not the conditional peace offered by lovers who needed me small. Not the artificial peace of a studio-engineered life. Real peace. The kind that grows quietly, like a long-forgotten seed finally breaking through the soil. At 71, I no longer chase beauty. I no longer chase approval. I no longer chase the version of myself the world tried to sculpt. I stand in my truth, aged, imperfect human. And for the first time, that feels like enough. I survived the loves that haunted me. I survived the man who controlled me. I survived myself. Pain made me stronger. Silence taught me resilience. And now, my story, every fracture, every shadow, every rebirth, is yours.